What is poetry, and what does it offer us? The recent winner of the Pulitzer Prize, Carl Phillips, known for the beauty of his language and the depth of exploration, has some answers. Jeffrey Brown went to St. Louis to talk to Phillips for our Arts and Culture series, Canvas.
Who am I? The hero says to himself, looking past his reflection on the lake's surface, down to where the darker greens give way at last to darkness.
From the poem This Far in Carl Phillips' collection, Then the War, winner of this year's Pulitzer Prize for Poetry.
Speak to me. Speak into me, the wind said, when I woke this morning. Let's see what happens. I used to worry that some poets write about a whole bunch of topics, and I feel as if I only have a handful, but that handful includes stuff like love, sex, death, and I don't know how you really fully plumb those subjects.
Pretty big things.
Yeah. So when in doubt, I'll comfort myself by thinking of Emily Dickinson, who really writes mainly about 2 or 3 things, but there's a lot to be said about the things she writes about. Death, is there a God? If so, what's our relationship to this person or thing? And I think she did an okay job.
Now 63, Phillips is a longtime professor at Washington University in St. Louis, where he lives with his partner Reston Allen and their dog Emily. He's author of 16 books of poetry and essays, including the 2022 collection, My Trade is Mystery, 7 Meditations from a Life in Writing.
I do think of poetry as somehow engaging with mystery. I think it's a mystery to be a human being and to figure out what to make of being in a body for whatever number of years that we get. And poetry to me is an expression of that mystery.
It began, he says, as a way of coming to terms with his own body and desires, being a gay man, along with his biracial identity as the child of a Black American who served in the Air Force and white English homemaker.
Did you grow up in a way in which being gay would be unthinkable?
Oh, sure. First of all, I grew up in a military family. My father was in the Air Force, grew up on Air Force bases, and it wasn't even about anyone saying this is what you're not supposed to be. It wasn't even talked about. So it wasn't an option. And I think between that and being biracial, which was another way of not feeling as if you fit in either side in some ways.
You're not this, you're not that.
Yeah.
You felt that.
Right. I would say more that I didn't feel it until other kids in school would say, you aren't this or you aren't that. And then I'd think, oh, okay, I thought I was just myself.
One way into poetry was through ancient literature. He studied Latin and taught it in high school for several years. Adding Greek, he's translated a Sophocles tragedy.
For me, poetry is necessary, and not just the writing of it, the writing of my own poems, but the poems I encounter by other people, and living and, very anciently dead. There's something restorative in reading something like the Iliad and knowing that war has always happened, or understanding within war what loyalty means, what love means, and that's something from very long ago, but still has contemporary resonance. I'm using 2 quarts of chicken stock, because that's what I've got.
It's not all tragedy for Phillips, who loves to cook and sing. He produced a series of pandemic-era videos to share with the world in need of uplift. But writing, longhand, is how he reaches people best, pulling together scraps of ideas and phrases into his poems.
You've called poetry patterned language. What does that mean?
A poem is made of patterns and the meaningful interruption of those patterns. There's sound, there's diction, a certain word might keep recurring, a certain image could come throughout the poem at different moments, and the artistry of writing a poem is getting those patterns to work in such a way that you condition the reader's expectations and you meaningfully disrupt those expectations at different points. There's actual motion, and that's a poem that lifts off the page.
At a time when much poetry takes on big issues directly, Phillips has a more personal and intimate voice. But he says the larger world, politics included, is very much there.
People used to say, where's your 9/11 poem? And my feeling is that every poem after 9/11 is a 9/11 poem. So much is political anyway. Apparently it's political for me to even exist in the world as a queer man of color. But I don't see how any poem isn't political in some way, because it's an individual stance. And also it's a resistance to silence. You've decided to speak.
A resistance to silence.
Yeah, one could have chosen not to say anything. And even writing a poem, say, about, I don't know, a leaf falling from a tree. And someone could say, how can you do that when all these things are happening in the world? But even as they're happening, leaves are also falling from trees. And I think of poetry as a kind of collective record of what it has been like to be alive in a particular moment of time. You, the dark that nothing, not even the light, displaces. You, who have been the single leaf that won't stop tossing among the others. For you.
For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Jeffrey Brown in St. Louis.